is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
To Robert Emery, who's a conductor, pianist, record producer and musical director, has worked with the London Philharmonic Orchestra and many, many others. How do you characterise this decision, Mr. Emery? Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Nick. I think we have to be unbelievably sensitive in these really difficult times. But the thing with culture, the thing with music, is that it pushes boundaries. That's the whole premise of classical music. That's the whole premise of the composers of the day who were writing new things that had never been heard. Some people, like Rachmaninoff, were not particularly liked by the Russian regime, and in fact, he left Russia and moved to America because he didn't like living there anymore. They felt it important in those days to try and ignore the noise of the world and write what they felt was right for their audiences and for the people to hear them. And at this very second you start bringing politics into the music and the composition of music, for me, as somebody who also composes, it puts us in a very tricky, difficult position, because then you start writing music which is only allowed. But having said that, in terms of the performance of the Tchaikovsky in Cardiff, you know, it is a very difficult time, and there is a complete understanding from my point that they want to change their programme to reflect what's happening in the world today.
But of course, it won't help the good folk of Ukraine, will it? I understand the nervousness over a piece such as 1812, but Nutcracker or Swan Lake, I don't sense the folk of Ukraine will care that much.
No, I think you're probably right there. I don't think the people of Ukraine will care very much about anything apart from what they're living through at the moment. You know, I always try and keep politics out of music and music out of politics, and I think that's the savvy thing to do. But I also have to respect the decision that if the people in Cardiff feel that they need to change their programs to not cause angst to their audience, and you know, there's a funny saying when you're a musician, which is you're only as good as your last gig. I.e.,
I know that saying.
You know, if you perform badly, or if you choose a program which the audience don't like, your audience don't come back. It's as simple as that. And I think they're probably just being very cautious. And I understand that. But you know, music culture is there to push the boundaries. It's there to make people think. The stories behind these pieces are quite frankly incredible and amazing, and it's an important part of history. And I can't tarnish Tchaikovsky. You know, writing music 120 years ago, 150 years ago, I can't tarnish him with what's happening today, and I think we need to keep that very separate.
Can I ask you, finally, a question, Mr. Emery? As a conductor, when you are doing your work with your professional colleagues, you have the power to bring me to the verge of tears sometimes with the work, just because of the sheer emotion that you can unleash as you conduct. But let me ask you this. As you start with an orchestra, sometimes, can they feel a bit sluggish or, you know, not quite on the pace? And if so, do you have to work even harder, or do you have the equivalent of a stick or a carrot? I know I can hear you chuckling. But if they're not quite up to speed, because I don't have an orchestra, but I have a team of journalists that sometimes they need a little bit of encouragement. How do you encourage an orchestra?
Well, it depends where you are in the world. So, for instance, if we're working with a British orchestra or an American, typically we need about a third less rehearsal time than if I went to somewhere like Korea or Japan for a start.
Right.
Because their level of reading, their level of speed when they're playing these pieces, and probably their experience is quite substantially different from UK players. But do you know what? It's striking a fine balance. You don't want to be Mr. Mean and everybody doesn't like you, because they then sit back in their chair and they don't enjoy it. And of course, the whole reason for music is to enjoy things. So it's about striking that balance, which I'm sure, Nick, you do every day in your newsroom, of being nice and friendly, but, you know, harsh enough that people respect you and trust you to get on with the job.
Here we go. So, here's the deal.
Using that stick as much as you need to.
Here's the deal, Robert. When we are through the hell that is Ukraine, you'll do my job for a day, I'll come and do your job for a day with our respective teams, and we'll see how we get on. And the money goes to charity. What do you say, Robert?
That's a fantastic deal, because all you have to do is wave a stick and pretend you know what you're doing, and you've got a job, Nick.
What do you think I'm doing here? I've been doing that for years on the radio. I haven't got a clue here either. Robert is brilliant. Thank you. Brilliant talking with you. Robert Emery, conductor, composer, pianist, record producer and musical director. I see what they're getting at, but I think it's misplaced. Shall we talk Tchaikovsky with Eve in Ascot? Good morning.
Oh, good morning, Nicholas. I've just been laughing at our previous gentleman.
What a
being
lovely
on the
guy.
door.
What a great bloke.
Charming, wasn't he? Yes, and very sensible, very sensible. I'm really, really